Hey guys, Nick here with what I believe to be the 12th episode of Off the Cuff. We have been doing these pretty religiously. If you're not familiar, or if this is your first visit to the channel, Off the Cuff is presented by Taylor Timepieces, and it's just basically our thoughts on some interesting aspects of the watch market. You know, what we believe, just chatting with you about what it's like to be a dealer, and just kind of a dealer who is just starting out, maybe in that middle phase. Anyone who knows Taylor Timepieces knows that we are not quite new to the business, but we are, young guys, just a group of young guys who are on the come up, and we figured discussing that would be a interesting topic and point of view for you guys. So that is what the purpose of this podcast series is about. Today, as I record this, because tomorrow, Monday, I won't be available. We have some meetings in the morning. So as I record this, it's Sunday, and we're a little relaxed today out of the suit persona. I'm still wearing something that, somewhat of a jacket, so I could still, pay homage to that off-the-cuff persona. However, today we are just here to talk about, watches, and, the fact that it's Sunday, and usually on Sunday, I don't know about you guys, but I'm pretty much more relaxed. This is kind of my weekend get up. During the week, I tend to be a little bit more suited, but I wanted to discuss, watches that don't get a lot of discussion and airtime, and watches that maybe you can wear on the weekend and beat around a little bit. And that, of course, is homages and these copycats and fakes and things like that, and what our company stance is on the matter, and then also just kind of what our opinions are and things of that sort. So as of right now, I'm actually wearing something that I would consider a homage. This is a G-Shock Casio Oak. So as you can see from a distance, it looks like a black dial AP 15500. It's a very popular piece in the watch collector world. However, it is, because it is so popular and it's so expensive, it is quite the waiting list to get on something like that. It's definitely a piece that is hard to come by at your local store. If you walk in an AP and you ask for a 15500, if you get it, great, but chances are, probably very unlikely that you will be getting that piece. And so Casio had this really interesting idea to basically mod these, these basically they're workout watches. I consider them to be workout watches, with a Casio or with an AP exterior, kind of like a skin, for lack of better terms. And I would consider this to be a homage, as I was saying. I think that it's definitely a nice piece. This is about 44 millimeters. It has, hit all of the appearances of what you would expect from, an AP or something of that higher standard. However, of course, something like this will cost you anywhere from $300 to $500, depending on the, color variation and limitability of the Casio model. And I think that it's just really interesting, because even, they talk about, how so many people are against homages and mods and things like that. And personally, I'm not. Definitely fakes is definitely not the way that you want to go. We don't condone fakes at all, ever. And the issue with that is, even if you buy a fake or a super clone for yourself, eventually when you go and sell it, that other person might not be as honest as you as basically disclosing that it's not a genuine watch, and then you kind of go down the rabbit hole, and a lot of good people have lost a lot of good money in this fraudulent multi-billion-dollar industry of fake watches. But then you touch the the preface of watches that aren't necessarily fake but lookalikes, and personally I don't have a problem with it. I mean, listen, if you want to wear something that looks like an AP and you don't want to spend, 30, 40, 50. I mean, right now at 15,500, we just sold one recently. It would cost you, in the high 40s to pick up something like that. I mean, this for $300, $400, to enjoy and to have for yourself, I think it is a good alternative. And I say alternative and not a replacement, because at the end of the day, nothing can ever replace a real thing. I never have a problem with homages, as long as at the end of the day, you are saying to yourself, hey, listen, I know this is a homage. I'm going to treat this like a homage. I'm not going to walk around and say, that this is a genuine AP or just as good as an AP. And because honestly, that's not the case. They wouldn't, make a $300 variant or $300 alternative if it was just as good as your $40,000, $50,000 watch. I think that there's a place. I mean, there's, as my friend AJ says, an ass for every seat, and I think there is a place for homages. You have those gorgeous Seiko Pepsis, or even, if you look at those, even the more mainstream brands. I mean, you look at a Tudor Pepsi. All the Tudor Pepsi is basically, they took the Pepsi colorway from the their parent company of Rolex, and said, hey, these people we don't want them spending $21,000 as the only way that they can acquire a Pepsi. So let's make something more readily available to them. Obviously the movement is different, and the dimensions are a little different. In my experience, the Tudor Pepsi, of course, is a little bit fatter, a little bit bulkier, and more, I don't want to say cartoony than the Rolex Pepsi, but I think anyone who's ever had a Tudor before knows what I mean. They definitely a little bit more full-figured watch than a Rolex, as far as lugs and appearance are concerned. But basically what Tudor said there was, hey, listen, we're going to make something that looks like a Rolex Pepsi, and we are going to make it much more affordable to the masses. And, they don't say that they're a Rolex Pepsi. They don't position themselves as better than a Rolex Pepsi. To me, that is an affordable alternative. Sorry about that, a little tongue-tied. An affordable alternative to, the Rolex Pepsi. And, to everyone who says, homages are gross, why not just save up for the real thing? Every time you buy a, Tag Batman, or you buy a Tudor Pepsi, or you buy a Casio Oak, you are contributing in some way to the homage market. I mean, or even, they have the Steinhardt Hawks. I mean, if you want to go that low end, for some of the people that are more higher end collectors. So that would be kind of my rebuttal to people who say that, there's no place for, those kind of watches and those kind of brands in the market. I think that, it's something like this too. I think its versatility is going to be a little bit better than, your average AP or your average Pepsi. I mean, I don't know about you guys. I would feel a lot more comfortable taking something like this to the, to the gym or on vacation than I would a 15500. I was in Italy recently for about 2 months before we started back up with this podcast again. I work with a clothing company that I help run with an associate of mine. Wearing something like this or wearing an Omega swatch, I did bring a yellow Omega swatch with me. That to me is just so much better and so much safer to bring something abroad and overseas than just taking your chances with the real thing. God forbid you brought your, Omega Speedmaster, Hezolite, or Moonwatch with you on vacation, and maybe you got in some trouble and they confiscated your watch. Or how many times, in the jewelry world, it is funny to a certain extent, but it's also not funny. You see these guys that are like, hey, I went to Vegas and I found a pretty girl that we spent some time together with, and when I woke up the next morning, my watch was gone. I don't know about you, I would feel a lot more comfortable with that situation if I had an Omega watch on and then a Moon watch, or I would feel a lot better about that situation if I had a AP, or rather, I'm calling it an AP, a Casio Oak on, because then I feel protected. And so I think there is definitely a market for these kind of pieces. I think that as long as you're upfront and honest, I at the end of the day, that's, in my view, what a lot of these really savage and really savvy collectors, savage and savvy collectors, have in mind. And when they get annoyed about these people that are flexing these homages, are, at the end of the day, it's like the real thing, but it's not 100% the real thing. These guys that are, I was browsing one of the communities the other day, and you see a Rolex guy who's like, hey, I couldn't afford a Batman, so I got a super clone Batman. That to me is just wrong. At the end of the day, at least to me, when I bought my first personal watch was in the previous episode, if you go back, is the Panerai 911. I got a lot of personal satisfaction out of knowing that I worked my butt off to get this watch and to earn this watch. And I've yet to put a Rolex in my collection more full time, because I always say, for the most part, as long as it's used, of course, any watch that I have in my collection is my watch to enjoy until it sells. Within reason. You don't want to be wearing watches that you have for sale and scruffing them and doing whatever with them. But usually, if you get a piece that is going to be a little bit longer in inventory, you can wear it every now and then and enjoy it. Maybe take it out to a nice dinner and feel good. So for whatever reason, I never got into Rolex as my first piece. I know, as a young guy, I'm in my mid-20s. You see so many people say, my first watch was a Submariner, or it was a OP41 blue dial, or it was a Datejust. And my first watch was a rather interesting Panerai. At least one that I had kept in my personal collection. And I just feel as though if I were to, let's say for me, my favorite piece of all time, my favorite Rolex, is that rhodium rose gold sky door. And we do have one right now in stock. However, I'm not wearing it just because it is consignment. We do take some pieces on consignment every now and then, and I don't want to be disrespectful to the customer and build that reputation that some of these other YouTube personalities have built by wearing consigned pieces. But so it's a beautiful watch, one of my favorite pieces. I would feel so much worse if I acquired that watch knowing it was a fake. I would feel even more worse if I acquired that watch not knowing it's a fake, but luckily, we don't have that problem because we are, rather experienced here. But I think the point of watch collecting, to a certain extent, it's like you're a kid in the candy store, and for me, it's a point of aspiration. You know, you start small. Maybe you start with a quartz Breitling, or you start with a Tag Carrera, and then you go up to a pretty badass Omega or Panerai, and then all the way, you know, after a couple months or years or however long it takes you, you get your first Rolex or AP, or, you know, even those people that are balling, you know, maybe they get their first Patek or Piguet. So, you know, to acquire a fake, to me, is just you're robbing yourself of that personal satisfaction of saying, hey, I earned this piece. I worked my ass off for this piece. I every time I look at my Panerai, I think of, you know, the first year that we, you know, went through business and we were success. I mean, there's so many businesses, especially in the online resale space, because you have a very little barrier of entry, that fail within the first couple months. They're not as organized, or maybe they just don't take it as seriously as we decided to take it. And every time I look at the pattern, I just get this sense of personal joy, like, wow, like I've earned this. I can hold on to this thing for as long as I want, and like this is my watch, and I'm happy about it, and it reminds me of basically that we succeeded. I had this idea, and you know, I got together with a bunch of friends later on in my journey. You know, Eric and Grayson didn't start working with me until after we were a little bit more established, but you know, I just think I would feel shitty. I mean, I'm, you know, Eric and Grayson are not on this show right now, but I think they would agree. And, you know, if they're watching this right now, put something in the comments. I'd love to hear that. Or everyone else, you know, feel free to use the comment section as you please. I mean, to buy a $500 or even a $3,000 super clone and pretend that you have the real thing, I think you're doing a disservice to yourself, because anyone who's a real collector and enthusiast will know that it's just it doesn't feel the same. I mean that's the easiest and simplest way to put it. It doesn't feel the same when you have a homage or when you have a fake. You know, but I mean, at the end of the day, like I said, they do have their purposes. You know, I look at homages not even for a convenience factor, but more so, you know, for someone like myself. I live in the city. New York can be a very great place, but it can also be a very scary place. I have a disability. You know, anyone who knows me, or if you caught my first episode of the podcast, I have some mobility issues because I do have cerebral palsy. And even though I, you know, live a very full and successful life, at the end of the day, I will always be a target to those people with poor intentions. So you have to be cognizant of that, and you know, the way you get around that is I'm not going on the F train with a $60,000 gold AP. If I want to go out with my friends and it's Sunday and we're going to brunch, I wear something like this. If they say, hey, Nick, you know, it's time to, you know, I want to buy something, I bring them into the office and they make that purchase. And, you know, those watches, for the most part, stay in that safe in the office. You know, we come in a special room, we have a special safe and key lock, and I think that's, there's a reason for that. I think that people, you know, you got into this conversation, and I was having it with a good friend of mine a couple of days ago, where they had asked me, you know, do you feel uncomfortable? And I said, no, but at the end of the day, I don't believe that people who get robbed, obviously, are people who deserve that. But at the end of the day, you have to protect yourself, and no one has your best interest in heart more than you do. So, you know, if I'm going to a club, I'm a young guy, I'm going to a club in New York City, like, I'm wearing an Omega watch. I'm not going to wear a Speedmaster. I don't care how many pretty girls are going to compliment me on my watch and think that I'm a successful big shot. I've done very well for myself, but I have a long way to go. There are plenty of people who have done much better, and I commend them and respect them. At the end of the day, I have nothing to prove. So, to put myself in a dangerous situation like that by wearing the quote unquote real thing, I think it's just foolish. And I think that if you're in any big city, I think that Homages should definitely have a place for you in your watch box. And they come too in so many cool and interesting colors. I mean, like, look at this. This is, basically the same thing as this, but it's in rose gold. Anyone who has any interest in the 42 or 44 millimeter rubber and rose gold APs, those things that go for 30, 40K. If I was to look at this and I was to look at this, I would say that, something like this is around the same price as this stainless steel piece. So once you get to the homage market, you can realize that, hey, listen, like, I can enjoy many different variations of a piece, and that's kind of what I was trying to get into, and maybe I got into it a little less smoothly. If you are on the fence about a piece that is maybe something you wanted in your collection for a long time, I would suggest, if you have a friend that is able to let you try it on, if they have that piece, or maybe you go to a jewelry store and you have that piece. That's always my first recommendation, but my second, and something that we don't talk a lot about in the industry, is, get a homage. At the end of the day, it's not the same piece, but, maybe you're just like, hey, I want to feel how this thing feels on my wrist. I want to see what it looks like. I want to, kind of get that look. And, for me, because I'm also alternatively in the fashion space when I'm not selling you guys watches, a lot of the reason why I enjoy watches are, style. And basically, can I wear this piece with everything that I enjoy wearing? And you basically, is it going to get a lot of versatility in the wardrobe that I have? And, getting a homage is cool for that purpose, because it's like, wow, like, I got to try this piece on, quote unquote, for only a few $100s. If you're looking at something like the AP, 44 millimeter or 42 millimeter gold and rubber, this piece right here, put it on your wrist. If you like the color, if you feel like you're grabbing it a lot at the end of the day for a couple weeks, then maybe you're making the right choice by moving to that, the real deal of dropping 30, 40K on a piece. But the worst thing you want to do is just go straight to that bigger, larger piece, and then realize it's not for you, that it fits a little awkwardly, that maybe it doesn't match what you're wearing on a daily basis. Maybe you're a suit guy and you realize that, hey, this big chunky bracelet just isn't working for me. Maybe you're a darker guy and you're realizing, hey, these lighter tones or these darker tones, they just don't fit well with my skin tone. And, basically it makes me feel weird. It makes me feel awkward. Or maybe, I like having this instead because I work in corporate finance, and I get this a lot from my young friends that can afford watches, is, hey, I don't want to look at a place in my industry. I either cannot yet afford this big piece, but I want to kind of fit in with the crew and kind of build those relationships with my team members, or B, I can afford those big things, and I'll hear this from the well-established tenured members in a lot of corporate jobs, is basically, I can afford these pieces, but I don't want my employees to know that what I'm spending on watches. I don't want my friends to know what I'm spending on watches. So I think at the end of the day, homages, while it's important to remember that you are not getting the same thing, and I would never represent or act as if the homage that I have is at all like the original. Apart from look, feel, and image. I think they are valuable in the watch community, and I think that they should be celebrated and not looked down upon. At the end of the day, we did, shameless plug here. We did, order a couple of these for the holidays, and that was kind of our thought process too. Was these guys that maybe have sons or daughters or nephews or any sort of relative that they want to get into the watch game. Without dropping, thousands of dollars, I think you can't go wrong with a homage. And, I think that, as I was saying, and kind of what this whole video is about, is, I think that there is definitely a lot of value in that space. So, again, thanks for spending some time chatting with me about this. And, I'll catch you on the next one. Bye-bye.